Okay. Hi, everyone, and I want to welcome you all for our 17 October general meeting. Today, we will have a couple of announcements, and we have interesting speakers that are going to talk about NSF-NHERI technology transfer. And after that, we have our RSR meeting, which is going to be again interesting, and I'm going to encourage you all to stay also for that. Coming to our speakers, our two fantastic speakers are Bill Holmes and Kelly Cobbin. Bill Holmes is the chair of the NSF-NHERI Technology Transfer Committee and an active member of the NHERI NCO Strategy Committee. He has 50 years of experience in structural engineering and building code development as a senior consultant and past principal at Radford and Cheltenham. He is also a member of the National Academy of the Engineering. Kelly Cobbin. She's a principal with the West Jenny Esner, if I am pronouncing it incorrectly, I'm sorry, associates in their San Francisco area office and is a registered civil and structural engineer with more than 30 years of experience. Her work includes a wide range of the project types, size, and construction materials with a special interest in the seismic and wind performance of the wood frame construction. She has been involved in numerous code development, research, and educational activities, including serving on the Provision Update Committee for the NHERI Provision, ASCS CI7, and also participating in code development and involvement in number of the BSSC and ATC seismic-related projects. She is currently serving as a president of the ATC board of the director. During the meeting, Bill and Kelly will present on the implementing of the research NHERI Technology Transfer Committee, and I encourage you all to use this opportunity to learn, as it is not a topic that we usually speak about it in the academia. By this brief explanation, Bill and Kelly, the floor is yours. I should stop also my sharing.
Okay, thank you. I will try to share my screen here. Okay, well, Kelly and I are happy to be here and share our experiences with technology transfer. As some of you that came on earlier, uh, just to show Kelly's credentials, she's going to go to an 8-day building code development meeting next week. So it's very pertinent to what she's doing right now. So we'll get into the presentation here. It's in three parts. I'll talk a little bit about the Technology Transfer Committee of NHERI, which is sort of unique. And Kelly will then talk about the methods of research implementation, much of which has been developed and documented by our committee, and there is a document for that. And then I'll talk a little bit about a research data, a database of all the research that NHERI has done over the last 10 years, and its availability for you to search for your interested research. So right now, talk a little bit about the Technology Transfer Committee. And as many of you know, because of NSS fundamental research objectives, not all research projects will be implemented in the near term. And the Technology Transfer Committee is aware of that. However, we think that considering what the stakeholders want and who the end users are, and making researchers aware of the technology transfers mechanism can have a positive impact on the future implementation for those researchers who are really interested in getting their research implemented quickly. The academic research landscape, we have to recognize the truth. There can be significant gaps between the results of the research and implementation because the designers are not designers and users, implementers of research are not always aware of what research is available. And on the other hand, the researchers are not aware necessarily of methods of implementation or what maybe is needed in the profession. So we're trying to bridge those gaps with our committee. Uh, the National Coordination Office, NCO of NHERI, was developed in 2016 when NHERI was created. And recognizing this technology transfer landscape, the NERI NCO proposed to form a technology transfer committee in that initial solicitation. This is really unique. It's never been done in an NSF project before, so we had to kind of start from scratch. I was on the initial NCO team primarily as a
Hello.
seismic. Yeah.
Legit, something like that.
Sorry, Reggie, could you mute your...
Okay.
Sorry, I'm
Sorry.
so sorry.
I thought someone had a question. I was on that initial NCO team as a seismic subject matter expert, but I also had years of experience in technology transfer. So the NCO decided I should be the chair of this new technology transfer committee. Kelly, on the other hand, has been on a committee from the beginning. And as I just suggested, she is still actively involved in code development. And she's had years of experience in technology transfer and has, in fact, contributed as much as anybody on our committee to the NHERI community at the annual Summer Institute for Early Career Faculty. I think she's attended almost every one. So what is our purpose in composition? Well, our purpose is to encourage and assist implementation of NHERI research, particularly for early career research faculty or others not familiar with how implementation actually occurs. The committee is composed of 15 to 20 volunteers. It's varied over the years, mostly practicing engineers, and we have people that specialize in all of the hazards covered by NHERI, seismic, wind, hurricane, tsunami, as well as geotechnical issues, which often cover many of the different hazards. So we do have 2 or 3 geotechnical engineers on our committee. All of our members are aware of involved in technology transfer, not only in codes and standards, but also in other ways. For example, geotechnical research is often implemented directly into practice because there's not a lot of codes that cover geotechnical engineering. There's also implementation occurs into policy issues, which are not necessarily in building codes. So there's many implementation paths besides building codes. So what do we do? Well, we are kind of passive in a way. We engage with research when they can't contact us. If they contact us and say, gee, I have this project, and what would you suggest I do to encourage implementation? We will then engage with them and give them suggestions. We help them also make connections with potential implementers that could join their team and help them make their research implementable as they go along. What we don't do is directly or run technology transfer activities. So there is a little bit of confusion about our committee because people sometimes call us and say, well, would you please implement this technology? That's not what we really do. We try to make the research more implementable and make connections to those people who might implement it. So that's the little blurb on the committee, and you can go on DesignSafe or other places and find ways to contact me directly. But now that you have our names, Kelly and I are at your service. So this next section, one of the first things we did was create what we call a white paper about implementation, which is available on DesignSafe, and Kelly will talk about that a little bit.
Thank you very much, Bill, and I will step in here. It is a privilege to be here talking to you. Really glad that we're having this conversation. And if you leave the meeting with only one thought, the thought should be, we're here, contact us. We can help you make connections. And so please keep that in mind. For those of you that are or have been involved in research, what we're really talking about here is that you're pouring your heart into very important research. But somehow we need to move down to the path to someone building something different or retrofitting something built different or building it there and not here because of your research. So we're really thinking about who's the end user, and how are we getting the message out to them. So keep that in mind as we go through the slides. One of the points that we would like to make is that there are some important documents out there that identify research needs. And within the NHERI community, the big, most important one is the NHERI Science Plan, that really is trying to lay out what are seen as priorities and important things to pursue. And so uh, what we'd like you to keep in mind is that for the science plan and beyond, if you can, in thinking about your research, go and look for needs that other people have identified, and needs that people have published that might help you to guide your proposals somewhat. It can help you to justify your proposals. You can say there are people out there that think this information is important and are willing to step up and do something with it. So it can be a wonderful justification, and it can help you start making those connections that we're talking about in this presentation, because you start getting an idea of who it is that's interested in topics that you might be pursuing research in. So absolutely NHERI Science Plan, huge within the NHERI arena. Next slide, Bill. This is the list of uh, research needs statements that have been identified by a number of major organizations as a starting point for looking for research needs statements. And next slide. So as Bill mentioned, the Technology Transfer Committee has written a white paper that introduces the topic of how technology transfer often works, talks about some of the processes like the code process and the standards process, some of the organizations involved in technology transfer, various particular areas and portions of technology transfer. So we would like you to know that this is available on the website. Thank you, Robin, on top of everything. And there's a web address that Robin just put into the chat. And so if you're interested in the topic, we would suggest read this first and then contact us, or just contact us. But this is very good background information. If you are pondering research, if you're involved in research, if even there's some research complete that you're trying to figure out the next step on. And for people not involved in research, it also is a wonderful introduction to how codes and standards are developed, and other related things. So highly recommended. And I'm going to be going through sort of a high level of discussion of some of the topics covered in this. Next slide, Bill. The next slide goes through a list of the contents of that white paper to give you an idea of what's covered, and we'll be stepping through these. So we'll just go ahead on to the next slide. And the next slide introduces the topics of codes and standards. And this is one of the very fundamental and powerful ways that research eventually winds up being implemented um, uh, within the US system. And one of the reasons is that for the most part, building codes standards are first written in the US at the national level, and essentially what are called model codes are generated with everyone coming together to bring their interests and concerns to write language that sets minimum requirements for buildings and related structures, and we'll talk about AASHTO and bridges and things like that as we go through. So the initial writing is at the national level, and then what's written there goes down to the states and eventually the local city or county for their adoption and implementation. And so in terms of something being implemented on a building or other structure, it's a very powerful way to get things broadly disseminated across the country. If there's an important change in wind design practice to improve safety or resilience, and you can get it into the process, it is very broadly seen. And the other thing is, as it goes through the code process, it becomes mandatory. It sets minimum requirements for construction that people must use, not it's a good idea to use. It really becomes must use, or it's an acceptable way to accomplish the safety the codes and standards are trying to establish. So it is not the only way by any means whatsoever. It is an available way. There's a lot of discussion to give you background on it in the white paper. Next slide, please. The building code is actually a very large group of codes. And this is a partial list beyond a building code, a residential code. It goes into existing building codes. It goes into energy conservation, green construction. It goes into wildland urban interface code for fire aspects. It goes into zoning, which is something that we sometimes want to affect in order to have more resilient communities. So it doesn't just deal with buildings and just tell you how to design the steel or concrete. The family of codes goes way beyond that, and there are lots of opportunities to engage in a wide range of topics that might be involved in your research. Next slide, please. And beyond that group of codes that comes from the International Code Council, there are a huge wide-ranging number of standards developed by standard organizations that feed into that. Some of them called codes, some of them called standards. There's a little bit of a loose relationship there. But as you see here, one of the examples is NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, that puts out what I would call both codes and standards, and is one of the fundamental places that fire-related provisions get into use. Certainly in the US and potentially beyond. It isn't the only place for fire. Interestingly, all of the material standards, the concrete through ACI, wood through American Wood Council, are developing fire resistive provisions within their material purview. But there are a wide range out there. Any material that you can think of that's used in construction has a process standard group behind it, feeding things into published standards that, again, are written on the national level, get adopted into building codes and inform construction nationwide. Next slide, please. That is serving primarily the building and related structure. Beyond that, there are a wide range of other organizations looking more broadly at infrastructure of all sorts. And as just a couple of examples here, you see AASHTO standards, and they have a broad family of standards for highway infrastructure design that eventually feed into the state DOTs, Department of Transportation, that either implement federal standards or adopt local standards, and a variety of other things like the standard that you see below, antenna supporting structures. So a wide range of standards out there addressing pretty much everything that we have in our built infrastructure that you might be looking at in your research arena. Next slide, please. A reminder that another resource out there, American Society of Civil Engineers, they are a very powerful standard developing organization. ASCE 7 is setting loads and other criteria for buildings and other structures, but they go way beyond that in their standards, their guidelines, their working groups. And this is just an accumulation of institutes. They have technical groups and some of the ASE standards. So plenty of opportunities to look for your place to engage. And as I say all of this, it's a little bit like feeding you with a fire hose with all of this information. But the point is that the white paper gives you a introductory background, so you can get a sense of where there might be opportunities for you to engage and build connections and collaborations. And contacting us as the Technology Transfer Committee, we can find knowledgeable people to help give you ideas and navigate all of this. Next slide, please. A reminder that a lot of times things can be implemented more at the local level than the national level. And that's just a picture of waterfront infrastructure, and there are so many things being looked at by the natural hazards community that relate to waterfront hazards these days. And so you can engage through local governments. Every local government has an emergency plan developed, and groups looking at emergency response that have problems they are trying to address and solve. And so that's one way to engage. There are public projects, and they have the ability to get into voluntary or mandatory retrofits, and even rules around development. So there are plenty of opportunities to engage at a local level, particularly when a local community has a hazard that needs addressing that you're interested in. So plenty to do there. Next slide, Bill. Thinking about areas like geotechnical, there actually is growing movement at the national level to develop geotechnically oriented standards, including ASCE is in the process of developing a foundation standard that kind of bridges geotechnical and structural aspects of foundation design. But there are some opportunities at the national level. As Bill pointed out, sometimes the geotechnical will not necessarily go through the code route, but be implemented more on a local level through a local community effort, sometimes locally through organizations like the Department of Transportation that's addressing soil concerns in particular geographic locations. Not necessarily the mainstream codes, but that's developing and lots of opportunities there. Software is another interesting one to contemplate. And clearly there are some national and particularly NHERI efforts as you think about NHERI Design Safe and the software tools being developed within the NHERI community, a lot to pursue there in terms of software development and how to take an area of knowledge and plug it into larger efforts being developed there. And certainly some other programs being developed at the national level. And I'm checking my notes because I wanted to mention Open Seas as one of the software types developed with the vision that it would be developed and maintained by the larger group. Beyond that, there is a whole world of software development. And again, if that's your area of interest, reach out to the Technology Transfer Committee, and we can help to identify people to take a look at your area of interest and advise you about connections and collaborations that you might have. Next slide, please. One of the areas that's talked about, and I don't expect you to read all the words, but just be aware that proprietary materials in research are treated differently in terms of the technology transfer and adoption. And as one example that maybe is familiar to everybody, if you are doing anchoring to existing concrete or masonry, chances are that you're going to be using a proprietary anchor that comes from Hilti or Simpson or a range of other manufacturers out there. And that anchor is their proprietary item that includes their trade secrets. And so it's this matter of it's their trade secrets and their proprietary copyrighted information that is used there. And you can't take trade secrets and copyrighted information and put them in the code or go to the code and say you have to use their proprietary one. Because if you put in Hilti's anchor, Simpson is going to be on your doorstep telling you that that's not right. And so there are laws in place that keep you from doing that. And so if it's proprietary, there are routes forward, but they are somewhat different. And so again, contact the Technology Transfer Committee, and we can talk you through how things work differently if you're working with something that is proprietary. One of the really good examples of this that's talked about, FRP, fiber reinforced polymer materials are actually widely thought of in the retrofit arena, whether it's concrete or wood or what have you, because the ease of application to existing materials and respecting the existing configuration of your building. But those have been developed in the proprietary world. And so if you're researching using them, you have no doubt taken somebody's proprietary system and started working with it in the lab. So keep in mind that there are different routes, but still there are routes forward, and reach out to us if you're interested. Next slide. And I think this is the last one, sort of looking at different routes through the paper, but education and outreach. All of those opportunities that were on the early slides, that were showing what conferences you can go to, where you can present papers and stuff like that. That is a really important part of your technology transfer, and you should be looking very broadly for those opportunities to get out, and very importantly, connect with people that have the same area of interest. Get people to come up and talk to you after your presentation. One of the important points here is think not only about the highly technical conferences, but think about articles to be published or presentations that go to somewhat broader audiences, because the people that might help implement what your research is looking at maybe aren't in the same narrow little technical band that shows up at your highly technical conferences. So look for the conferences and the opportunities that let you talk to a larger group, where you might connect to someone who has structures that they oversee, where they might be interested in implementing the technology that you're looking at. Next slide, please. One last thing to mention in this arena is that the research that you're involved in might not take things all the way to the point where they're ready to pop into codes. And if I can channel something that gets said often in this arena, it's NSF does not fund code development. They fund research, and sometimes the research is developed to a way where it's pretty close to being able to be put into one of the codes or standards or other routes that we've talked about. And sometimes there's a need for another step, to take the research and sometimes collect several different research projects and their outcomes and move that towards the codes. And these organizations tend to write pre-standards, which is an initial draft of a standard, pulling that information together, or guidelines or other sorts of outreach documents. And so if at the end of the research it isn't quite ready, then there is this opportunity to look towards organizations that try and help fill that gap. Very much technology transfer organizations that look at that gap between the basic research and the implementation. Next slide. And maybe next slide after that. So the white paper goes through and talks about a series of organizations that might help to fill this gap or make connections that help you fill this gap. And so I would tell you to take a look at them. And again, all of this is the type of content that we can discuss with you if you reach out to the Technology Transfer Committee, and we can tailor that discussion to what is related to your particular areas of research, and the end users that might be using it, and the path that is most helpful for the research that you're involved in. So next slide, I think.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
at
you,
this point, I can
Kelly.
hand it back to Bill.
Okay. The current project that the Technology Transfer Committee is doing is creating a database of all the NHERI research that has been done in the last 10 years and trying to make that available in one place so that both the potential implementers as well as early career faculty or other people who want to know if there's some researchers doing things of their interest, they can find it. So uh, this database now contains over 400 NSF awards that have been done in the NHERI program. We are now in the process of putting in the extreme event reconnaissance organizations. You've probably heard of GEAR or STEER that go out and do reconnaissance after disasters. They produce reports, and we are putting all those reports into the same database because right now GEAR and STEER and other extreme event reconnaissance organizations are under the NHERI flag. So this database includes the title, of course, the PI, or multiple PIs, the institution where it's done, and of course the NSF abstract, which describes, what the research is. And there have been also two tags with each research project that generally describes the characteristics of that research. There is also a word or subject search of the abstract that is supposed to be general to help you find the research you're interested in. Right now, it's sort of clunky and limited to an exact match of letters, which that is not very useful because, for example, if you search for ports, it will find reports. So we've complained about that, and in the next couple of months, we're going to get that fixed. There's two keywords that have been put into been assigned to each research project. One is a type of study, and we think there's four types of studies. The most uh, uh, logical one that most people think of in research is it involves some sort of laboratory testing, particularly because the NHERI facilities have very sophisticated testing capabilities. But there's a lot of NHERI awards done that are purely computer modeling, software development. So that is a different type. And then, of course, there is reconnaissance awards that I've just mentioned. And there's also facility awards, large awards where these sophisticated research facilities have been developed. So there's actually a proposal done by the university, a group of universities, uh, to NSF to give them money to create these fancy facilities like the wave basin or the wind tunnels. The second key word that established is which hazard is being considered primarily uh, with each research project, and these are the hazards and the key words that we've developed and put into that database. So who are the potential users? Well, of course, the first one is the potential implementers. And I think Kelly and I and the rest of our committee has found that in general, the code committee people, many of them are not aware of what is happening in NHERI, certainly in the level of detail. So they may be, in fact, aware of some problem in the design industry and are not even aware that someone has done some research that would help that problem. So we want we want to allow those implementers to search this database for results of interest to them. The other use is for students and early career faculty to understand the breadth of the NHERI research, particularly the state of knowledge in the area of interest to those students, and find institutions where that research might be being done, or find PIs who are interested in doing similar research to your interests. So this will take you to that database, and I'm going to hopefully go there. This is a high risk function because sometimes it goes there and sometimes it doesn't. So this is the page of that research database. You can see here that database is available, and you can go there and play with it yourself, the students, and I think it will become more and more useful as we add things and make the searches more comprehensive. So I think we are done with our presentation, but if there's time, we'd be happy to answer questions or.
Thank you so much, Bill and Kelly, for the interesting presentation. I myself learned a lot. We have about 7 to 10 minutes of time, so we open the floor for any questions. If you have any questions, write it either on a chat box or open your mic and just ask your question. Before that, I myself have a question. I think one of the sweet spot that graduate students usually looking for is a internship. And I am curious that if this committee helped the students to find the internship that is relevant to their field and also help them to experience more practical things too.
Well, that's interesting. We have never thought of that. We could certainly help you find an institution
Okay.
where there is research being done or interest in the same area that you're looking for. But the actual internships availability, we are not into that.
Okay, so for any connections or for any relevant field, they can reach out to you and asking about that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question for students that might help them think about what some of the things that they might consider. How many of you, and just write yes or no in the chat, how many of you are working on research that can impact policy or codes in the future? Just quickly, if your research focuses on anything that might impact codes or policy, type in yes in chat. Or if it's no, you can type in no. Yeah, if you want to do a thumbs up, that's fine too. So as you're doing this research, your research won't necessarily get to the code part or to the policy part. Bill and Kelly are the people that are going to help you make those connections to not only do your research, but actually make that huge impact where it's going to impact everyone outside of engineering. So they have the correct, I'm going to think of wind. They have the correct roof attachment that they need based on the building codes that your research helps create, right? So you're making sure that everyone else is protected because they're able to access and use the research you've done because it's then filters down into building code. Kelly, yes? Is that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If your natural hazard research for the built infrastructure and anything that you're looking into that would say that we should be doing something different in where we locate, how we construct, how we interconnect, is something that should be part of the technology transfer chain that gets it from your work to there is a new building going up, and in order to make it wind resistant, this is a mandatory minimum load requirement or whatever it is. So that's very real. One of the examples that we use at the Summer Institute has to do with the fact that more recently, because of coastal storm surge damage,
Yeah.
buildings at the shorefront are being raised up and elevated. And so you see houses and other buildings up on pole foundations, if you will. And that's been done over several decades now. And when people go out and look at the storm damage after the high wind and storm surge events, one of the things that they found was that the underside of those elevated buildings was getting torn apart, and that there was a lot of damage occurring to the underside that isn't critical when you're down at the ground, but you get it elevated 10 feet up in the air, and suddenly it's seeing really high wind loads. And so there was data collection, there was laboratory testing, there was analytical modeling, there was wind tunnel testing to try and figure out how best to design that floor structure on that elevated building so that it wouldn't be vulnerable to significant damage. And now in ASTE 722, there are specific sections that address how to properly design the floor of an elevated structure. So taking it through the whole process there with it being discovered in post high wind event reconnaissance, like many are doing through the NHERI network. And going through the research aspect of it, and then going through the standard committee aspect through ASE 7, and landing in the building code that January 1st of next year here in California will be the law minimum required, and similarly in other states. So hopefully that made some sense. I should have had a picture.
Well, that's one of the NHERI success stories, because that was something that was done through the NHERI program and went directly into the building code. It does take a while. That's the other frustrating part that everybody should recognize, that that at the end of your research you may have some wonderful development, but it may take 6 or 7 years actually to get it into the code.
Thank you so much, Bill and Kelly. For the sake of the time, I would encourage people, if they have any questions, Robin has put the Bill and the Kelly emails on the chat box. You can email them and ask your question. I want to thanks again for being here. It was really interesting, and it helps the students to learn more about the practical side of the field that they are working, and how they can make impact on the community and society, which I think is more important for the future. Thank you so much.